In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful Podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pepin. Today we're diving into principled leadership under fire, restoring integrity and family values in politics, and empowering veterans and everyday Texans to thrive. Our guest today is Timothy Mabry, a Navy veteran, former fire officer, and proud sixth-generation Texan. He served abroad the USS Arleigh Burke and was honorably discharged after confronting illegal activities, proving early on that his conviction ran deeper than convenience. A lifelong Eagle Scout and devoted Christian, Timothy went on to lead teams in the fire service, guiding others through chaos and life-or-death decisions. Today, he is the founder of Lead Through Fire, a consultancy firm that helps veteran, first responder, and blue-collar business owners grow with grit and purpose. Now stepping into politics, Timothy is running for Lieutenant Governor of Texas with a mission to restore integrity, defend families, and create new opportunities for his state. If you enjoyed this discussion, please let the world know with a like, a small review, or even a quick share. Your supports help more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Mr. Timothy Mabry, welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
I am blessed and highly favored, Sam. Thanks for having me on the Meaningful Podcast. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure having you. And I know you for a little while now, and you've always been very inspiring in your ways, in perhaps the way you communicate, in the life you live. So very, very glad to be able to have you today. To kick us off, please tell us more about Timothy for Texas campaign, please.
Yes, Sam. So Timothy for Texas campaign is my political campaign website for my run for lieutenant governor here in the great state of Texas. And that's where you can find the platform, my beliefs, and just how to get involved and some of the major issues that are currently going on that we're facing.
Nice. Beautiful. And obviously you've been in the Navy, you've been obviously in business also. Now you're basically in the political world. I want you to take us basically very much at the beginning, at the genesis of all of this. You always been a conviction over convenience sort of guy. And I think a perfect basically way to illustrate this to begin with is the USS basically Arleigh Burke story, which I think was sensational. And I really want you to obviously explain more of what that story is. And I suppose, how did that moment of whistleblowing in this case shape your outlook on leaderships and public services?
Well, Sam, that's a very tough story. So for me, I'll give you a bit of a synopsis of this. So
Please.
When I got onto the ship, I was this young 19-year-old kid, and I was heavily sheltered as a child. Let's just say I was extremely sheltered. And I got onto the ship, got flown out to while I was on deployment, and I went into a department that I didn't want to go into. So my rate fully was undesignated. I'm an undesignated fireman, which means I had to go and strike or apply for a job that I wanted to go for. So I got put with a department that I did not want to be a part of. And my chief in E6 or E7, he would take me into the bowels of the ship because I didn't know certain tools. And I would get beaten with the tools. At the same time, my E6, first class petty officer, started to separate me from my fellow shipmates and make threats to kill me and to do a few other not so great things along the lines of the Me Too movement that we had a few years ago. It was very similar on that realm. And it put me in a really bad headspace. And eventually I made threats, or not threats, but I had said, it's people to one of my shipmates, it's people like you who make me want to hurt myself. I made that statement not being in a good spot for a while. And there was no intent behind it. It was just frustration. And then I got forced into a psyche eval overnight and was talking with the doctor, told him the story like for the first time, everything that had happened. And he was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. You're going to have an option. You can either report it or I report it. So I decided to take control and have myself report it. So when I got back to the ship, I told my chief what had happened at the hospital and what happened on the deployment. And I was sitting in the yeoman's office with my chief, told him everything, and they're like, all right, you got two choices. You can either do an open investigation or a closed investigation. And the open investigation meant it's going to be loud. It's going to be everyone on board the ship, the commanders, everyone knows what's going on. Full NCIS investigation. The closed one would mean, oh, well, nothing were to happen to him. Nothing was going to happen to me, except I would just get taken off the ship and go to a different ship. That was all that happened. But given that guy wasn't the best person, I had the option of, okay, which to do. So I sat there at this point, still 19 years old, figuring out what to do. And I decided, you know what? This guy's a problem. This is not the way the Navy operates. I'm going to make sure that somebody takes the brunt, knowing that it could up and include my naval career. Because one thing that I've learned in the military, this was in 2012, was that they don't like whistleblowers. They don't like people who speak up against situations at all. And because I did, ultimately they tried to discharge me. While the investigation was going on, I was notified, hey, once it gets concluded, you're going to be immediately discharged. That day came, they tried to discharge me, and I fought it. I fought it for 6 months, and I lost the appeal. That was one of the biggest issues that I rose up into, because being 19 years old, being in that type of situation, and having to make that type of decision to say, what am I going to do? Am I going to rise up and stand for my fellow shipmates, or am I just going to let this go quietly? But my conviction is to put people over your own self-interest, people over power. And I decided to take that brunt and that sword just because I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of getting things exposed. Yeah. In the Navy, if you have something like that happen to you, it isn't the male mentality. That's a bad thing. You get, it's frowned upon, and you get kind of ostracized a bit.
Sure.
So that's what shaped me, part of my early adulthood, because I was an Eagle Scout in high school, and I became an Eagle Scout in 2010. So I grew up in scouting, so we had leadership. We knew when to speak up and how to push back. Got out of that, joined the fire department, worked my way up, learned a lot of different lessons. And always it's people first over anything else. And then now in the political realm, we're looking at how right now in our state legislature, we're being bought or being sold. And it's no longer for the people. It's for the powerful, and it's for a select group of individuals pushing power. I was in a conversation with someone the other day, and they said, you know, why are we calling our politicians leaders? Because most of them have never led anybody. Most of them have never led on the front lines. They've always sat in the courtrooms, the sidelines, telling people what to do. They don't actually take charge themselves. So why are we calling them leaders?
Interesting. Yes, absolutely. I think it was Edmund Burke, basically. And he had this interesting quote basically talking about the fact that the only thing necessary for evil to prevail is good men to basically not do anything. And that's really something that I think about very often, because not doing something in the midst of chaos, in the midst of evil, and witnessing it is contributing to it. It's indirectly basically contributing to it. I think that's perhaps story, I suppose, is one of many levels of wisdom. And I think it's a very great, again, sort of mantra to go from conviction basically over convenience, which very few people basically chose such things. I want to talk about obviously leading through fire and leading through chaos, I suppose, and sort of the lessons from the fire line, right? Which as I'm sure have been multiple. And you really sort of, I suppose, went from fire grounds to crisis leaderships. And I think it's very, very interesting. And the way you manage, I suppose, real-time high-stake decisions is something that I think could be very, very useful for us to understand. So from your perspective, what parallels perhaps do you see between commanding a fire team and navigating basically political leaderships, or even back to the Navy? How do you see those as sort of universal rules? How do you take everything into considerations?
Well, when it comes to fire and politics, in business, most people shy away from a firefight. They shy away from getting uncomfortable. So in the fire department, when you get that call, like you train, you practice, you get ready, but the moment you get that call, everything changes, because you could be having a conversation with somebody or an argument. You could be in the middle of hunger. You could be in the bathroom, and then that call comes out, and now everything is switched. And you have to have the mentality, I have a job to do. It's going to be uncomfortable, and I don't know what I'm about to walk into, because there's plenty of times where we get a call, hey, respond for a possible structure fire or a fire alarm. And then you show up and you're like, oh my gosh, this is getting out of hand. And then you had, being the officer on the truck, had to make quick decisions and to coordinate not just people within your team, but complete strangers that you have never met a day in your life. They're relying on your leadership. And the first communication that they have with you typically is a radio. They're hearing your voice over a radio, and they're gauging how the incident is going to go. They're gauging your leadership and your character based on the tonality of your voice. And I got pretty good at having these, I call them shit sandwiches, and remaining calm. And there was one fire ground that I went to that this guy didn't recognize my name, but he heard my voice and he was like, I've heard your voice before. You're Mabry. I know this. He's like, you're always calm and collected on the radio, no matter what happens. He was like, this was right after one of our first structure fires where we had a heavy fire on the Delta side, and it was blowing towards an exposure. And we were the first in crew of 3. And he was like, yeah, your voice was calm the entire time. Like, you could hear a little elevation, but there was a authority and a peace to it. And he's like, I keep hearing this over and over again. I'm like, whoa, okay, that's cool. But it comes from the voice, and to say, look, we have a job to do. And as the leader, as the man, we have to remain calm in the midst of the chaos, because if we don't, everybody else around us freaks the hell out, and they're looking to you for guidance. Now, afterwards, that's when it's your time to decompress, and it'd be like, oh, okay, whew. Because on the inside, you're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. But on the outside, you're like, take a deep breath, breathe in, breathe out. I will not scream and shout. And just have a breath of fresh air. So it's like, one of the tips that I did and I learned early on was, when things are stressful, your adrenaline is racing, and you just want to go at it and just yell, take a deep breath before you speak. Like, in through the nose and then talk. That helps bring the heart rate down, helps collect your focus. And then as you talk, as you give orders, there's a more of authority to it. And you can tell those who are calm and collected versus those who are not. And it's taking that into the business and into the political realm. Because right now, we see people on both sides yelling at each other. Yes. I was at a protest 2 days ago. There was a call that the Alamo here in San Antonio was going to be under attack, that some of the protesters put a call out to occupy the Alamo. And being someone who practices what I preach, I put on a body armor and a pistol and a flashlight, and I went out to the Alamo to make sure, hey, nothing were to happen to it. I was with a group of other people who had the same idea, and they're still protesters. I was walking around and saying, hey, do not yell, do not engage. Stay out, stay to the side, listen, don't yell, become peaceful. Because the moment you do, the moment you escalate, the moment they're going to escalate. They may be yelling at you, and if you yell back, it's going to just escalate and get it out of hand. We have to remain calm in these situations. And ultimately, I ended up having some great conversations with these protesters. Heck, one of the leaders of the protest called me yesterday afterwards, and we had a good conversation for an hour and a half. We were able to find common ground just because we remained calm, just because we went into a neutral mentality of we're here to protect the Alamo, we're also here to protect the citizens, even though we have different viewpoints. And it's bridging that gap, which you have to do in leadership. Because I've had instances where in the fire department, I got into an argument with a superior, or had an argument or a heavily discussion with a subordinate. And then we get calls. You have to push past your personal feelings to accomplish the goals. So whether you're in politics, you're in business, in your own personal life, if you have a common goal, you have to push past your emotions. You have to start thinking logically. Because if you're going to emotions, you become irrational. Yes. They're good for passion, but we have to think like Spock in high stress situations. What is logical? Take out the emotions. But what's logical and how are we going to do this? Because emotions means quick, impulsive, and irrational thinking. And that can get us into some major trouble.
Don't do what you want, do what you need, ladies and gentlemen. And you had this great quote, Tim, which was, crisis doesn't build character, it reveals it. Tell me more about that.
It's like alcohol. What's already there, it just gets magnified. So if you're a good person, same with money. If you're a great person, money, power, whatever it is going to magnify it whenever you get it. Same with crisis. If you've trained, if you prepared, if you have a good moral standing and character and are willing to do what's necessary, you're going to rise to the occasion. If you're not prepared and if you're not, you're going to fall back. And that's where your character will be revealed in the midst of the crisis. And we've seen some leaders fall. They buckle up and then they buckle down and fall down into that crisis because they're not prepared. They're what I call the keyboard warriors. They're the ones who sit in the office, they type on the keyboard, but the moment the call comes out, the moment shit hits the fan, they freak the hell out and they're the first ones to do impulsivity. And they're unfortunately the ones in the news who do something stupid on both sides.
Yeah, interesting. I want to talk about the work that you're doing, obviously, for Blue Collar Texas and sort of this concept of from barnyards to boardrooms, perhaps. Let's just put it this way. Obviously, your consulting firm supports a lot of veterans and first responders, and I suppose rural business owners. From your perspective, what are the biggest blind spots, perhaps, in how we treat blue collar businesses development, I suppose, today, and what can we do to perhaps fix those?
That's a great question, Sam. So the blue collar workers, what I've seen is they're great at with what they do on the day, like in the business. But when it comes to working on it and the growth, they get stuck in the mentality of, I have to do this myself. If nobody else does this, then it won't get done. And they want to have that quality, and it's releasing that control that they have a problem with. But they're damn good at with what they do. And a lot of what I help with is just helping them get out of their own heads, helping them see, hey, look, there are alternative tools that are out there. Most of the trades right now are filled with boomers, those who are 60 and 60 plus, and they don't know anything about AI. They don't really want to touch social media for marketing. They're of the mentality, which is not wrong. The more you put on social media, the more is out there. So they shy away from that severely. So it's like, hey, look, social media is a tool. It is cheaper than old school marketing.
By far.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure you've seen that, Sam.
Oh, yeah. By far. Absolutely. It's having access to the whole world in a free account. Yeah, sure. You can have, sponsors posts and boosted posts and so on. But you're right. It is in some way, basically, to get yourself out there in a way in which, like you said, can feel a little bit, especially at the beginning, right? You put yourself out there, it's always going to stay there. It's the internet. So I think there's this sort of fear. Do you think that's one of the biggest blind spots, I suppose, is sort of this misunderstanding is probably not the right word, but sort of this, I suppose, what is necessary for them to go over that and sort of understand just how big of a benefit it can be.
Yeah, there is that fear involved, and it's the fear of the unknown. Because technology is new, it is rapid and ramped up. And you got to think about it. The individuals who are 60 plus, 60 years ago, there wasn't phone. Internet did not exist. Computers were massive just for a couple of megabytes. Today, we have terabytes on little flash drives like the size of your thumb or your thumbnail. That is insane what the chips are at these days. So you have a massive leap in technology, and we're seeing it advance so quick, and it's hard for us to keep up with. It's moving so quick right now that most people can't even keep up with it. Like, they're learning one tool and then it changes. Like, one of my clients, a year and a half ago, I told him, hey, you need to use ChatGPT. It's helpful. You need to use it. Okay. Did a few things with it and then forgot about it. A few months ago, I was like, hey, you need to use ChatGPT again. You need to outline a bit of a sales plan. You need to outline a few other things, like take the resources and tools that we have, talk into it, and then have it assist you in crafting these. And he didn't do it. This past week, he said, I used ChatGPT's free version, and they created this job posting for me. I was like, yeah, I told you to do this too. He's like, oh, but they know about the tools, but they don't want to use it out of fear. And then when they finally use it, like, wow, this is so great. It's amazing. It's not as scary as I thought it once was.
Exactly.
But we have to adapt. Like in the military, it's like adapt or die. If you don't adapt, you're in trouble.
Yes, absolutely. I suppose from your perspective, right, you were talking about, I saw this interesting post of yours, which is, we don't need more experts, we need more doers, right? And I always love to, I have a team of employees and partners and so on, and I always see people through what I call time horizons. There's visionaries, people that talks in the future, right? People that create things, that envision things. Then there's the doers, that's a present tense, people that are actually in the trenches doing things. And there's another group that I call the nostalgics, which is typically your mentors, the people in which basically been through things, which typically talk in the past. Now, and actually I agree with you, you are in a place where you're saying, well, we need more doers. And so I suppose I'll start with my perspective, and I'll let you perhaps answer on what you think about that. I think that we live in a world now where a lot of people, I think, aspire to basically be in that visionary basically category, right? Let me create the next Facebook. Let me be the one basically that take all the prizes, that go on the front stage, and that made basically this incredible things that now change the world. And I think that with obviously our populations perhaps getting older, we definitely see basically this sort of distinction, like you said, where a lot of them are coming back to their jobs, where those were people that, had a career before, especially with technology, like you said. I mean, we're talking about it's not even trying to rationalize it is difficult. The understanding that we did so much in the last 60 years for technology is ridiculous when you really sit down and you think about it. But you really own in on that doer portions, on the people that, again, at the end of the day, yes, there's consultancy, yes, there's experts in all fields, but then the job needs to be done. All right, the job needs to be completed by somebody. Why do you think we need more of those, and how can we incentivize our society to not only perhaps do what it takes to make them feel, I suppose, proud to be doers, and how can we build upon that from a society perspective to, I suppose, be a bit more coherent within it?
Well, that's a good question, Sam. And a lot of this goes, but I can bring it back to the trades. So we're seeing right now throughout the trades here in America, it's between 5 and 10, for every 5 and 10 tradespeople that leave, only one replaces them. That is an egregious bleed of resources and people that we're having. So our population is increasing, but yet the skilled technical workers are decreasing. And a part of that is because we've been sold a lie here. So when I was in high school, we were told college, you need to go to college, get a degree, work pretty much a management job, work for a corporation. That is what you got sold. It was never talk about tech school. or the trades, that was frowned upon. And right now, most of the high schools, at least I know in Texas, they have programs where you can get an associate's degree by the time you graduate high school with the number of college credits they have. There are only a handful in my area to where you can get some type of tech school certification. When back in the 70s, that's what they used to have. It used to be you go to high school, by the time you graduate high school, you could be a plumber, you could be an auto mechanic, and you could be an electrician. You would get the basic skills necessary to go and get those jobs and make more than a livable wage. And
Oh yeah.
And today, I know plenty of people who get a certification and they make more than a college student, and there's no debt or very little.
Oh, for sure. It's great paid job. Absolutely. I think that it's the stigmatizations. The like you said, the sort of being frowned upon because you're a technical worker and not some type of person in a suit with a tie. Do you think that we're doing enough to fight that stigmatization from your perspective?
Not at all, because we're still having a lot of people want to go to college more than the trades. We're still seeing that bleed over. But one of the things that a lot of younger people are looking at right now and seeing is that difference of pay and the disparity of, okay, I can go and go to college, get a 4-year degree, and spend almost $200,000 or $300,000 for that degree, and make $50,000 a year. Or I can go spend 6 months to a year in a tech school and make $50,000 to $100,000 starting out. Where's that? How does that work out? And a lot of those trade jobs, you can actually get paid to do the job while you're getting certified. So it's not just you're going to school and you're having to not making money or making an income. You're getting paid at the same time to learn those skills. At that point, you're like a tradesman or tradeswoman. You're an apprentice. You get to learn on the job training at the same time. And that's one of the differences. But the real problem is in our society here in America is everybody wants to get rich and famous online and through the mobile device. That's what they want. They want to be able to sit in an office in a nice, calm, cool environment and become viral and become famous that way. And it's attention, but it's also the ease of funds. Oh, for sure. Because we have kids or some people playing video games, becoming famous. We have some people taking like pictures of themselves and becoming multi-millionaires. So when you see things like that, others want to replicate that. They want that easy, get rich quick mentality. But the reality is that's a very small percentage. If you can figure that out, fantastic. But that is less than 1% of 1% of people who can make that happen. And it doesn't just happen overnight. You see someone go viral online, there's usually years and years of work that gets put into it that you don't see behind the scenes. And everyone's like, oh, I want that. But they don't want the sacrifice. They want it to come right here, right now. And that's where a lot of our leaders or our politicians and people are like, even in the business, they get into it and it's like, all right, I'm going to make money. I'm going to be rich very quickly. And they get into it and it's like, oh no. Like one of my clients I just onboarded yesterday, he's been in his industry for 6 years. And he's like, we're revolutionizing it. It's taking some time to get the momentum, to get things ironed out. He's like, but it's going to happen. And like, people don't realize the sacrifices. When you start your business, when you're in these growth phases for years, you're working 80 to 100 hours a week. Family time, it doesn't exist as much because it bleeds over. When you're pushing, it's insane. I talked with a political consultant, and he said those who are running for a political office, especially higher level, you expect to work 18 to 20-hour days every single day until the election day. Then you're going to get some breather. So for a year and a half, you're working and you're pushing 18 to 20 hours a day. You're running on little sleep. You're exhausted. You're tired. And there's a lot that sacrifices into it. It's not just, oh, I'm going to be here. No, there's a lot of groundwork. And that's one thing that it's been lost. But we need to start showing people, hey, look, there is alternatives to it. There is a benefit to it. we're so pain adverse. We see easy pain medications in our grocery stores. If you have a little bit of pain, oh, go and take this medication.
Yeah.
But through pain and through the fire is how we grow. If we're not uncomfortable, if we don't get into pain, we will remain the same and we'll never reach our true potential. And that's something that we've lost. And we need to start showing that back in the schools, back in the houses. Say, hey, you know what? Let your kids be wild. Teach them and give them responsibility at a young age and start instituting that back into the workplace. Let them make mistakes. Let them fail. Let them be themselves and try something new. Don't chastise them for it. And that's how you're going to be able to revolutionize. And then for the government, I personally believe we need to stop guaranteeing loans to people going to college. Here in the U.S., we have federal student aid for colleges. You don't have to have anything for that, and you can go get a couple $100,000 loan for your school. But here, you want to go to tech school, you want to get a loan for that? That doesn't really exist. That's frowned upon.
Yeah, interesting. We had a great conversation, Timothy. I think it was a few weeks back, and you were talking about the fact that truly your campaign was born out of frustrations and not basically not really ambition, but just a desire to restore basically Texas values. It reminds me of, JFK, what he was talking was, ask not what the country can do for you, what basically ask yourself what you can do for the country, perhaps. What do you think are those Texas values? If you had to just name me a few of them, what would it be? And I suppose, what does that mean for you?
Well, true Texas value is grit, determination, and the ability to stand up in the midst of wrongdoing and giving up any personal or just sacrificing your own personal belief, comforts for the greater good. We got to see that with the Alamo. We had almost 200 defenders, around 200 defenders of the Alamo sacrifice their life in defense. We got to see people from all over come together and to say, we're going to stand up against a tyrannical government. And they built a great community in the mentality of, hey, come and take it. We're going to put our people first. We're going to not bow to the powerful. And those are parts of the value that make Texas great. That's why we have the mentality of, hey, don't mess with Texas.
Mm-hmm.
You want to play stupid games, you're going to get stupid prizes. That's the mentality down here. And we're seeing people coming in here who want to play stupid games. And then when they get the stupid prizes, they're like, oh my gosh, what's happened? Well, we warned you. We are a proud people. We care about each other in our communities. And when you go to a small town in Texas, Sam, it's like family. Like just the mentality of people. It's not like when you go to New York or Chicago, when you're walking down the road, people, and you wave at them, they're like, what the heck? You're looking at me, you're talking with me? They give you a really funny look.
Yes.
Here it's like, howdy, what's up? We will, depending on the vehicle or person, like a truck, if you're having your hand on the steering wheel, you like do 2 fingers up. Like, what's up? Like, how you doing? Mm-hmm. That's just a common respect that we have, but we're losing that now more and more. And we're starting to lose what made Texas great. The people are caring about each other, but now it's being pushed to caring about money, caring about power. And it's about ego here. And it's like, it's never been about ego. One of the greatest lessons that I've learned in Texas history was that early on in the 1800s, in our state legislature, the members had disagreements on the floor. And at the end, they would go outside, drink, and they would fight it out. They would have sometimes fist fights and then go back in and revote the next day. And they were calm and cool. Yeah. They solved it with some aggression, but it wasn't bad. It was healing. Men, if you watch 2 men fight, typically they become best friends afterwards. Like, you're like, you stupid. You fight it out. Hey, guess what? You're my best friend. All right, you're cool. There's always going to be some friction and animosity amongst men. And that's how we get it out. Because there's a bit of a hierarchy too. And whenever that happens, all right, we settled this out. Now let's get down to the core of meat and potatoes and the issues.
Right.
But we're losing that. And now it's, oh, my feelings, my opinions. Oh, my wallet. But you're not getting what I want done, because what I want done is what my donor wants. And if my donor doesn't get what they want, I won't get reelected. I won't be able to keep my seat, my interest. And that's a unique problem that we're seeing here. Like right before this, I was reading an article at how one of the largest organizations for donations in Texas is a political action committee, or PAC. And it was for law firms to come together. There was some specific legislation that they wanted through, and they weren't happy with how it ended up. And they put a hit list out against some Republicans and other representatives to say, we're not going to fund them anymore. And we're probably going to fund their competitor. But it's like, that's the real game.
It is. It is. How do you take upon that game, by the way? With everything you've been through and so on, that's sort of the white collar perhaps problems, and the white collar is basically sort of war. Have you been able to adapt quite nicely to it, or
adapted to it? So the white collar, they're the ones who sit behind the desk, but they're easily intimidated. How they're intimidated is they're intimidated by those who can't be bought, who have nothing to lose. And when you look at war and strategy, the clunky military units, or the groups, are usually the easiest to take down. And that's kind of our usual thinking, because the individuals that are smaller, they don't care about themselves. They don't care of how it's going to look. They have a goal. They're tired. They're frustrated, and they see it as me or them. And right now, the big issue that we're seeing is property taxes here. Right here in the state of Texas, our property taxes keep rising year over year. And our government solution is to compress it. So they just buy down what the debt is or what we owe. But then the appraisal districts come in and say, we're going to up it by 10 to 20% or more in some cases. So they up it. So if the state legislature says, hey, we're going to compress it by 5%, but the appraisal district says we're going to up it by 10, guess what? Your taxes didn't decrease. It just increased. And I have been watching Texans get taxed out of their forever homes, out of their home that they've been living in. They get dissipated. They can't pay for it. Like for me, my property tax value went from $26,000 for a little over half an acre to within 2 years, it shot up to $125,000. It shot up almost $100,000 in value just for the land in 2 years. That's insane. That's not a 10 or 20% increase year over year. That it tripled in value from 25 to 75 that 1 year, and then 75 to 125 the next. That is not sustainable. So any tax relief that our government's been doing doesn't work. And that's what we've been seeing just here in Texas. And the people are mad. Our current lieutenant governor, he just pushed through a couple of policies, and he went on the campaign trail this week, and he said, I am facing backlash from Republicans that I did not expect whatsoever. He's like, I am seeing an unprecedented backlash from my supporters on this bill. And he is shocked on it. But that one kills 50,000 jobs. It outlaws anybody with any levels of THC, whether in state or not. If you have anything with THC, you will get 1 year in jail.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. In Texas, this is the bill they passed. He just forced through. He forced that bill through using some bullying tactics.
Mm-hmm.
And he's mad about that. He's mad that the people are not just blindly following. They're questioning. And he's trying to go for a fourth term in office. Here, we want small government. We want term limits. We don't want bureaucrats or lifelong politicians. And he's trying to go for 16 years in the same position. So he's trying to go for his fourth term. And we're looking at these things as judge not what somebody, like what they say, it's judge what they do. Judge their character based off of their actions. Because anyone can talk the talk, but are they willing to walk the walk? And for me, I preach protection of people. I preach the Second Amendment. So this past Wednesday, I was up in Lufkin, Texas, which is 5.5 hours away from me. So I got notified that, hey, there's a threat against the Alamo. Come defend it. So we drove back, made sure my family was safe. I got the body armor, the pistol, the light, and drove to the Alamo. And doing that, I was talking with the protesters too, talking with law enforcement. And they both said, I wish that all of our politicians would actually show up to these things. Those of them who are making these policies, I wish they would be out here talking to the protesters, talking to the officers, talking to people on both sides, because they just sit in their offices. They sit behind a desk and they don't get out there. And the only time you see them typically is during election or campaign seasons.
Yeah, when they need to show up. Yeah.
It's when they need to show up. It's when it's convenient for them, not when it's the middle of a protest, not when people are heated and angry because of the policies that you put. I get security. I understand that. But most of the people that I ran into and I run into who are not of a similar mindset, they're not angry people. They're just passionate and they want to have a dialogue, and they get frustrated and angry because they feel as though our government and our politicians are not listening to them whatsoever. And it would do a major difference if these people just got in front of everyone and say, look, I'm here. Let's have a conversation. And that's something that we have lost as a country. We've lost the transparency. Like, and most of the politicians will never talk about their day. They never talk about themselves in a positive way or even a negative way. They have teams to go out and push content for them. Like, oh yeah, this is what I did. I did this. It's all about the me or blowing the accomplishment. It's not saying, hey, I screwed up today. This is what went on. This is my mentality. They're not showing what they do. And that loses the relatability to the average person. And
yes,
like the guy I spoke with, who was one of the guys at the protest with the megaphone, he was like, you defeated a Sigma for me today. He was like, I thought all white people who were coming out here with the body armor, I thought they were all bad. He's like, I thought some of them were going to come out to kill us. It's like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, but you're different. Like, you and this other guy, you're humanizing it. And instead of saying, judging a book by its cover, one of the best things we can do to break people's guards down and open these conversations is to go up to them and be like, hi, I'm Timothy. What's your name? I had someone just come out of the blue recording me, and he just asked me a question, and I was like, hi, it's nice. I want to get to know you. Before I answer your question, let's get to know each other. Let's make this more personal. So it's like, I'm Timothy. What's your name? And he just took a step back, and his initial question was pointed. You could tell that there was some frustration behind it. But the moment I introduced myself and I brought the humanity back into the conversation, it was a great dialogue. It was calm. It was collected, because it's no longer the me versus you mentality. It's a we against the machine, against the real problems. Here in the U.S., in Texas, is a Democrat. We're told it's a Democrat or Republican issue. It's not. There's issues on both sides of the aisle. And like, can we just say both sides equally suck? There's issues and corruptions on both sides. Well, let's have a conversation about this. Let's not shy away from it. And let's address it head on. And if someone flicks you off and is rude to you, just do this. Like, love you. Their looks when you do that is like, what the heck? But it's to show that compassion and love back into the leadership, back into the politics and in the business. Because if you are able to lead from the front and show people I'm here and you inspire them, it's going to help your business grow. It's going to help your political. It's going to help you in your job, because people want leaders that inspire them, not ones who just dictate and tell you what to do. Because if you're just dictating, anyone can do that. I can say, hey, go out and do this. Okay. But are you going to do it? Have you done it? And if the answer is no, are they going to listen to you?
Sure. When you think about, a lot of your platforms obviously talk about restoring the family, rebuilding the republic, perhaps is something that you talk very, very much about. And I suppose, tell me more about, in terms of our audience, about, I suppose, for you specifically, talking about humanization, talking about this we, what specific policies would you introduce to strengthen the family unit in Texas specifically?
So with the family unit, we've seen a major divide that men are no longer in the household, and there's been a negative stigma And part of that comes into child support. So here in the United States, men have a lot fewer rights than people believe. You hear about this feminist movement. Great. They want equality. I'm fine with that. But then at the same time, men are being demasculated. I know personally in multiple stories from friends who they want to be in this kid's life. They have no rights and no say. You hear it's my body, my choice from a lot of females. But what happens when the male wants to step up? When they want to have that kid, they want to raise it. But it's seen in our society that kids, the responsibility for kids is only for women, that the men have no real role in. That's what we've been seeing a push for more of. And one of my friends, he was telling me that he has a couple of kids with this one woman and he's paying child support. He's trying to be active in her life, but she refuses to let him have the kids. Refuses. Yeah. And she's holding them as hostage. He said at one point, she ended up having other kids and he had to instead of taking his kids out for a date, play dates, or taking him out for a vacation, or just taking him out to build bonding time with them, she said, no, you have to take all of the kids. You have to take all of my kids. It's not fair to them. He's like, but they're not my kids. It's not their daddies. Like, I want to bond with my kids. I want to be active in their life. And she was holding them hostage and ransom. Another guy, the baby mama, was saying, oh, he is so abusive. He's horrible. When in reality, she was doing drugs. She was doing drinking and driving. She was doing a lot of wrong. And here he is getting blamed for things that he's not even doing. She's going before the courts and fighting him. And he's like, I just want my kids. Like, I just want to be around my kids. And what we've seen is that now there's some guys like, why care? Why should I even do it? And we have a lot of younger men who are 25 and less who are saying, I'm not even going to have kids. I don't want to have kids. There's a rising number of individuals who are like, yeah, I'm never going to get married. I will do everything in my power not to have kids because of how broken the system is.
And I see this often. And obviously, as you know, I'm up north in Canada, and we see the exact same thing. It's because family is the bedrock of society. There is no going around it. If we want to prosper as a society, we need obviously new generation to step in. And it reminds me of a lot of conversation that I had with both men and women. I'd say more women in our cases in Quebec are saying, basically taking the position of not wanting kids because it's a terrible world, and why do it basically in a world that looks like this, which I think is a very big misunderstanding of history. But that's a side point. I really think that we need to like you said, team back to, and that will be a perfect basically point of entry for Christianity, and sort of a lot of your belief would shape basically how you go into politics and others. But is this concept of the nuclear family, of a loving woman, loving man, basically breeding basically lovely children's, that's the only thing that has been basically successful from a civilization in the history of mankind, period. And I really think that there's a word towards it that we ought to fight. We ought to have masculine and strong men and virtuous and feminine women, and that perhaps positioning. There's exceptions, always exceptions, and I think that we're making too much of a case for the exceptions most of the time, so that way just dilute the whole basically conversations. But in a nutshell, like you said, this masculinization basically of men as being usually to the detriment of actually everybody, of both men and women. And what we've been seeing is that, and I'm seeing this in Quebec, like I said, I'll speak for ourselves, as I only been once in Texas, even though it was lovely, is that as men basically are stepping down, like you said, and sort of giving up, perhaps quote unquote, we've been seeing women perhaps not being able to stay in their feminine basically energy because of, again, that lack of masculine energy to support it. And so I really think it's, again, we're complementary people, all right? God made two sex because we're complementary, not equal, we're complementary. And there's a big difference within that. And I really think that the way you position yourself towards that is one of not only noble basically virtues, but also, again, sort of a Christianity faith that you have, which I really want to sort of talk a little bit about. You talk a lot about it in a modern leadership sense, right? And I want you to tell me, how do you maintain, I suppose, convictions in your belief while navigating basically, obviously, public scrutiny and everything else, basically outside of your control of bashing it, the war on Christianity, which I think is extremely clear in the West. I don't think it's even up for debate. Tell me more about your position within it and how your faith is helping you not only in your own journey, but building this whole platform for the state of Texas.
Sam, that's an in-depth question. Whew, that's a good one, though. So we have to look at how Jesus responded to situations. See, he loved people, but despised sin. There's a major difference. You can love the person, but despise the sin. That means is you're going to love the person as they are, but you're not going to condone the sin. You're not going to condone the bad act. But like we've seen plenty of times where a child commits a heinous crime, but the parent still loves them. That's what God and Jesus sees for us. Hey, he loves us, but if you mess up, you turn away from him, there are consequences to our actions. And Jesus held that line. He had anger, and it was directed at certain points. The apostles implemented that all the time. They corrected a lot of the churches. He rebuked them too. It's like, hey, stop what you're doing, because what you're doing is on the route for sin, is on the route for corruption. You must stop that. And it's to evaluate everything as a whole and the way we see it, not take it for surface level, because we have a lot of anger directed towards certain individuals because of their identity and ideology. But Jesus says, hey, love the person, don't like the sin, which means you might not like something, but don't hate them. Don't go after them and try to kill them. Don't do something heinous to them, but like, don't support their behavior. It's like, I won't give an alcoholic a bottle of beer. I'm not going to go and do it. I'm not going to say, here, go drink and go drive. Not going to do that. You make rules and things against that to prohibit that type of actions. But we need to start evaluating, is this biblical? Is this in the principles of what we were founded? Right now, the degradation of the United States is saying, hey, we're not a Christian nation. We never were. That is a bold-faced lie.
Oh, it's disgusting. Yeah.
And the big reason it's a lie is the biggest material reference for the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence was the Bible. That was the source cited the most out of anything. I want to say it was about 40% of the Constitution was written based off of the Bible. And that was the largest contributing factor. Of the 13 original colonies, 12 of the governors signed oaths of faith in order to have that position. They had to sign oaths of faith. Now, one still signed an oath of faith, but he wasn't a Protestant. I think he was Catholic, but he still was of the Christian belief. A little bit of a difference, but still of a Christian belief. And they had to sign these oaths of office in the beginning. But that is not taught. That is something that has been eroded. And we say, we're not a Christian, we're not a godly nation. But we have seen a lot of peace and a lot of turmoil. A lot of peace happen in this country and turmoil happen in other places. The United States was one of the first countries in the world to abolish slavery. We are one of the only ones to have a civil war. And that was the big contributing factor. There was other issues. One of the biggest contributing factors to the Civil War that we had in America was on the issue of slavery.
Yes.
What other country killed millions of themselves on an issue to free people? That is huge. We're white. Here we are, what you call a white nation, fought a war to end slavery. Yes, there was still racism. Yes, there was still issues that transpired. But we were one of the first countries in the world to fight against that and to establish a precedent. And slavery still happens in other parts of the world. And other religions, when you talk about, right now we're seeing a lot of slide of Islam happening here in the U.S. Just recently, in the past month, our governor squashed a development that was happening up in North Texas. And in this development, their goal was to create an Islamic community where Sharia law ruled supreme over Texas and federal law. That is what they were trying to do, and it got squashed. But we're seeing this bleed happen, and people trying to say, our God is dead, but he is not. Our God is not dead. He's alive, and he is with us. And this bleed over and saying that we have to accept in someone else's religion. We have to accept your own beliefs. But yet, if a Christian goes into a Muslim nation and they say, I'm a Christian, they can be killed. They will be killed. Same with a woman.
They could be killed.
They could be killed.
Mm-hmm.
And in some places, it is like in China. If you're a Christian and you're at church, they will kill you. There are churches underground, and the church is thriving in those places. But they have a very real threat of rebuke your God or be killed. And that's what's in the charter of Islam, is to convert or kill all non-followers of Islam. That is in their charter. It's not say turn the other cheek. It's not of love. It is of come to us or die. And that's a very real push into what we're seeing. And we're seeing the moral degradation of our beliefs here in the society. The Constitution was written on a good, moral, standing society. That is how it was written. And it was said by one of our founding fathers, the more rules, the more legislation that we have to put into place, the worse our country is. That we watch a slide, and we're watching a slide every year, and it's getting worse and worse. We're seeing where it's chastised to have one man, one woman with kids. Like, that's being chastised, and we're seeing more of that in Hollywood. We're seeing more of that pushed down our throats. And it's like, it's okay. It's not. It's not okay to say, hey, look, this is the moral fiber and fabric of our being, of Texas, of the United States. And you're trying to unravel it for somebody else. And we see what's happening in those countries. Women here, this is what blows my mind. You have the feminist movement saying women's rights, but at the same time, pro-Palestine, pro-Islam. But they don't know what that means. If they enact Sharia law, that means you're not going to be able to walk around in a bikini. You're not going to be able to walk around in shorts. That's gone out the window. You must have a head covering. There are rules in place that if an American woman goes overseas, they have to have those head coverings. And women in that religion are property. They are not people. And that's
certainly depends where. But you're right. There's this. As someone that read the Quran twice, I have to say that, and I have obviously Muslim friends, Muslim partners, Muslim basically clients. The Muslim faith, in a way it unfolds, is one that is much more violent than Christianity, without the shadow of a doubt. And as somebody that's been basically in Dubai, I can tell you that it really depends on where you are. For example, in Dubai, it's way more open than even Abu Dhabi, for example. And obviously, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, that's not even a question. So there's definitely, I suppose, something to be worried about, because we've been seeing that with the numbers of people that are following each religion. Obviously, Muslims just overtook basically Christians as a number of basically disciples. Obviously, we need to always be careful of these studies, as they cannot basically obviously ask everyone, but it's still true that by far the religion with the biggest momentum, I suppose, following wise, is the Muslim faith. I think it's a reflection of our world, which is again shifting towards this emasculations of men, specifically in Judeo-Christian basically countries, and a misunderstanding of what masculinity is, which basically leads some men to make the false basically concluding basically that what they need and what they want is that overpowering basically hierarchy over women and over basically other people. And I think it's a fallacy. It's something to be very careful about, very careful about. Talking about this basically more precisely, Tim, you talk significantly about border security, the battle for sovereignty. Obviously, you said something around the lines of, and I will definitely misquote you, but it was something around the lines of a country without basically second border is only an idea without a gate, something like that. And it was, which I think was very beautifully said. From your perspective, with the current administration in place, we've been seeing those numbers. Obviously, illegal immigrants going way down. I suppose people that are also very favorable on both sides of the political parties, actually quite favorable, basically, to restricting access to the United States. From your perspective, shying away from slogans, right? What would be sort of a more deeply and in detailed plans of what it would look like if you could get into that role?
So part of the security is to pretty much create what's called a DMZ or demilitarized zone around a border. The United States has secured the borders around the world. Now, we need to have and change up our immigration process in the way. Because what we were seeing before is a lot of people coming in, and amongst those, there were what we call coyotes, individuals who were picking people off and human trafficking them. That was a very real issue. And it's to give our law enforcement and police more authority and autonomy to push back on that, not just on the state level, but on the federal level. Our current administration is pushing back on that. We're seeing the number of people coming over en masse. It's been decreased significantly, which is a good thing, because now they're coming in and it's like, what do? How do they go? And there's always a real incredible threat when people do that. One of the issues that we've seen is that some of the people that were coming over were men of fighting age. It wasn't just women and children. That's not the majority. The news will take a spin and show what they want for an official narrative. They will hide what's really happening. But the reality is you have a lot of these people coming over who are men who are less than 30 years old. So men of fighting age are coming in. And some of them have been active duty in other militaries and Chinese. So we're seeing a lot of Chinese immigrants coming over on the border, not just South Americans. We're seeing people from all over the world get funneled up through Mexico. And so part of the policy is, hey, look, we need to make sure the border is secure. But we need to have the Texas State Guard, which is our own guard here, actually have them teeth to be similar to the National Guard. Because right now our State Guard doesn't have the teeth. They don't even have their own equipment or weapons. They got to buy it themselves. They're just people who get a stipend and have a role, and that's about it. But it's to give them a little extra teeth, enforce the policies that are on the books, and then also push for a way to say, hey, if you've been in this country for more than 10 years, you've tried to get through immigration, you try the process, let's rehash this. Let's vet you and to make sure that you are good and that you can be brought in. Because right now, it's a lot of gray area, and people are paying about $7,000 or so for traffickers to get across. So they're not just walking across by themselves. A lot of them are actually paying to be a part of these caravans, to be part of these groups, to be smuggled in. So they're having to pay a $7,000 fee. And then when you get here, people are having to pay an immigration lawyer. They're getting scammed. They're getting abused. And that frustrates me. I also want to put protections in some of the crap that happens of if you have a business, that you must pay people for what they do. There is a story that I've heard, not just in Texas, but in other parts of the country, where individuals who were illegal came, they were doing a good job, they were working on a farm or working on a construction site, and at the point that everything was almost done, it was like 95% done, the boss or the owner called immigration to pick everybody up so they wouldn't have to pay them.
Yeah. It's absolutely disgusting.
And like, that's disgusting. To me, that is a modern type of slavery, and I'm not okay with that. It's like, if you're using somebody for your own personal gain, you're not paying them. That's an issue. And that needs to be stopped. So as to put policies and protections in place of, look, we're not going to judge you on the color of your skin. We're not going to judge you on the status fully. We're going to judge whether or not you are here peacefully, if you are here in the right way. There's a vetting process. And to say, if you're here, you've been doing things, let's evaluate how to get you the citizenship. This way you're not living in fear. Because some of these people are not going to work. They're here, but they're caught up in a really strange limbo. Because if they get out, they get a speeding ticket, they're immediately deported. They're sent back. And I don't believe we got to send everybody back. We got to be extreme. I believe we need to be more in the middle and have that Christ-like mentality, but also protecting our borders and saying, not everyone's going to get through. Can we sustain it? Can we have and afford the growth? Because the part of the fall of Rome happened because of open borders.
Mm-hmm.
so many people pushed into this country, and then, or so many people pushed into Rome, and then when Rome was fighting amongst themselves, the barbarians took them over. They won. They took over from the inside. That's how they ended up doing it. Same for here. We're having political dissent. One side's like, let everybody in, and there's no vetting. And we have seen what that's done to our system. It's taxed it severely. So we need to figure out what limits and what limitations that we can do. What can we afford? What kind of growth are we able to assist with? And then open up that process. To say 5 to 10 years to become a citizen, that's an extremely long time. That's just going through the normal way. Because if you apply for asylum or you apply to come here in America, it's a long process.
It is.
But they do so because they want to make sure you're good. But if you're in these crises, I can get it. But yeah, we're having so many people come here. And it's like, why not fight for your country? Why not stand up and fight for your place? And what frustrates me as a Texan, as an American, is when you have people here in the U.S. waving a foreign flag who are not of here, and then they're starting violence. Like, hold up. If America is so great, if you love this place so much and are fighting to stay here, why are you waving a foreign flag? Why are you fighting against our people? That, as I see, is an oxymoron. Now, if they were out there saying, hey, you know what? I'm here waving the American flag. I love this country. And they're not saying, F the government, screw this. It'd be a different story. But that doesn't sell in the media. That doesn't gain attention. But it's that oxymoron that frustrates people who have been here for generations and saying, look, you're not voicing the right stuff. You're going away from it. And also to put rules of engagements that can be seen for protesters, that can be seen for law enforcement. Say, look, keep things peaceable. Let's have a way of engagement. Like we have rules of engagement for war, have rules of engagement for protesters and those protesting and counter. Like, hey, do this, don't do that. Like I saw some people the other day who are on a different side of the aisle go into the midst of the protesters. That is not a good idea. That's like walking into a beehive with a firecracker, throwing at them, and then when it goes off, you're just like, I don't know why, and like they're hurting. No, you did this for a reason. That's not the time or the place to have confrontational dialogue. That's a time where, for those who are open, hey, you want a conversation? That's the way you're going to change someone's mind. That's the way you come to an understanding and to an agreement. Not yelling, not getting mad. We got to stop the extremism because that's how we can remain divided. The more we talk, the closer we come together. And that's what we need to be more of and put those rules of engagements up there, like, and make it well known. Because right now people just show up. They have no idea.
All right. The Grit to Govern, Timothy Mabry. Was such a pleasure to have you on the Meaningful Podcast. Perhaps the price of greatness is responsibilities, and I think that you embed that with all your heart. It's beautiful to see you at work, my friend. And I would love if you can leave our audience with some last words of wisdom, please.
Yes, sir, Sam. Thanks for having me. This has been a great time. Word of wisdom: whatever is easy is never going to be easy. And the difficult is going to be a challenge, but we just, no matter what you're doing, someone's always going to come against you, and you have to remain strong. You have to be morally convicted and know what you're doing is right, and that no matter what anybody says, you can do this, you will do this, and stand strong. And in those moments where you're weak and you're struggling, look to God, because He is the ultimate strength. And keeping your eyes on Him, you will never fail, you will never falter, and He's got you. You've got this.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.